Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to Kendal Mountain Book Festival, presented as part of Kendal Mountain Festival. We're delighted that Cotswolds Outdoor is the official book partner this year. We'll be leaving time for a Q&A at the end, so save up those questions, and book signing will happen straight after the event in the tent outside that you would have seen on your way in. A reminder to switch off all your mobile phones, and should you need any assistance, then our wonderful festival volunteers are at hand. I'm Jenny Graham, and I have the pleasure of chairing this event this morning. Craigie has many national and international cross-country mountain biking achievements to her name. She represented Great Britain in 2 World Championships and later went on to become the British mountain bike champion. She made her country proud when she represented Scotland on home turf on the 2014 Commonwealth Games, and it doesn't stop there. She became the 24-hour mountain bike champion in 2016 and continued to race at the sharp end of the ever-growing yet niche scene of off-road individual time trials, such as the Highland Trail 550, Silk Mountain Road Race and Tour Divide. She's the founder of Cycle Fit Therapy and co-founder of the Adventure Syndicate and Cargo Bike Movement, and has spent the past 4 years as Scotland's Active Nation Commissioner. But there's far more to Lee than that. Her instinctive decision-making, delivered with the right amount of confidence to establish just enough credibility to lure you into following her, coupled with a quick wit and a readiness to laugh, makes her one of the very best people to get into nonsense with, both on and off the bike. She's a skillful crafter of wood, ideas, and most recently words. In her memoir, Other Ways to Win, she guides us through her life as she carved a career as an elite athlete and takes you way beyond. Lee has a unique perspective on the world, and it leaves you gripped as she unfolds her inner findings and reflections. Please give a warm festival welcome to Lee Craigie.
Jenny, that must have pained you to really write all that lovely thing about me. What a lovely introduction.
Yeah, it's funny your friend interviewing you. I wondered how worried you were about that.
Very
because
worried.
You know that I know way too much, don't I? Don't you worry about it. Kendal is just part of a much bigger book tour that you're on at the moment. The best part, I'd imagine?
Absolutely.
Yeah?
Without a shadow of a doubt.
Brilliant. How did you find the writing process of Other Ways to Win?
Okay, so Vertebrate Publishing got in touch about 6 years ago to say, how about something sort of memoir-y? And it took a really, really long time to put that together. And initially I thought, easy, I've got lots of stories already written, already told. I'll just put them all into a book and write an introduction and conclusion, and that'll be it. And it was not it at all. The more I wrote, the more I tried to compile, the harder it became. And then lockdown happened, and a really interesting thing happened where I realised that I couldn't actually write inside. So I couldn't get the creative juices flowing while I was inside the house. And so I had to wait, for another year before I could start writing again. And then I started going outside and finding bothies to write in and fishing huts and going to remote islands, and then it all just started coming again. So the process was convoluted, but I'm so glad, and I'm sure Vertebrate are as well, that we got there in the end.
As are we, Lee, as are we. Other Ways to Win is a strong title, and maybe not one that you'd expect coming from an elite athlete. Can you give us a summary of what that is?
What it's all about, yeah. That introduction, when I was listening to you give that introduction, I was thinking, God, that sounds like somebody that would just write a book about how to win elite races. And that was a really formative time in my life, that 10 years where I was full on, 100% focused on cross-country racing, very, very focused on heart rate and performance and set outcomes. But I always knew, like in the back of my head, that's not how I got into mountain biking. I got into mountain biking to explore the outdoors, to access hills. It was always about fun and adventure and play. And then I don't quite know how it happened, how I got onto that elite mountain bike conveyor belt. But the whole time I was doing it, there was a little niggle in the back of my head that was, this isn't the whole story. This is interesting, and some of it's quite fun, but this is not what it's all about. Like here, this isn't what this is all about to me. There's really when I drilled down and I thought about the stuff that makes me healthy and happy and the most content, it's almost the opposite of mountain bike racing. So I was getting something out of it physically, but there was something more. There was something in the reframing of what it is that we think winning is, that we think success is, that I really wanted to explore further. And I thought that from my experiences as someone that was so goal-focused, that was so focused on this traditional sense of success, this traditional winning, wouldn't it be interesting to try and pick that apart and actually look at what success could mean for us all to be healthier and happier? And so that, I think, is a theme. I hope that's a theme that flows through all the different stories in the book.
Yeah. It's an interesting concept, isn't it? Like, I do wonder, and like, what do you think? Do you feel like you got to such a high level in competitive sport, and then you could have that realization? Almost like, did you have to go there before you could find that peace, I guess?
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Yeah. Because I was the British mountain bike champion, but actually I was a really small fish in an international field. And so you would get these moments of, I've made it, I've succeeded, I'm at the top. But then you would go to the next competition, you'd go to an international sporting competition, and you were nothing. I was coming 40th in World Cups. And I realised that...
Still quite good, I would say. I mean, it's not nothing, is it? I mean, she can ride a bike.
Thanks, mate.
Yeah.
But, what I realised in that process was there's always something more. Like, you could always be trying to push it. Probably even a world champion would cross that finish line and be like, okay, well, what's next? Well, what's next? And how can I get better? And how can I stay at this level? And that, to me, I don't think is a recipe for happiness and contentedness. So I had to just really... And it naturally comes to an end.
Yeah.
A sporting competition, anything will naturally come to an end. Cycles all come to an end. And so instead of thinking, well, how can I stay good and how can I stay the best and how can I continue to beat other people? But like, actually, I need to figure something else out here.
Succumb.
Just have to succumb. Accept the inevitable.
We'll get back onto that in a while, but I want to go back to your early years. So Lee and I met at least 10 years ago. The very meeting is a bit blurry, but it was around 10 years ago. And I like to think that was the fun part of your life that I kind of entered into. And so the beginning of the book for me was most fascinating, but also really emotional and sometimes quite tough to hear some parts of it. You're very honest. Give the audience a little bit of an insight into who little Lee was.
Little Lee.
Little Lee.
The book starts as sort of 7-year-old Lee, because I think what is quite interesting to some people to learn is that I never raced a mountain bike until I was 26. But at 7, quite a lot of my contemporaries, like those women that were beating me in World Cups, they were all being hothoused already. Like, they were already on a path to become, their champion, their country's champion. And I was cutting about on my little red BMX, like just not really thinking about what it was that I was doing with my body. I was very physical. I came from a physical family. I was encouraged to explore the outdoors. I was given quite a lot of autonomy. And there were all these other formative experiences in my life that I think, it's hard to compare, but I think they set me up similarly to if I'd just been like drilled in the way that these other women had been. So, for example, a really, really formative evening of my 7-year-old life was when my dad was outside in the back garden. It was like sort of summer dusk, that sort of time when it's still light outside, and as a child, the last thing you want to do is be told to go to bed. That time, it's just like, why are you asking me to go to bed? It's the middle of the day. So I would do absolutely anything to stop being told to go to bed. So I went outside and I offered to help cut the grass with my dad, who was trying really hard to start this petrol lawnmower. And he couldn't get it started. And I was like, I just knew that I could do it. I was like, Dad, can I have a go at starting the lawnmower? And he was like, you're not going to be able to do it. I said, just let me have a go. So he went inside. That bought me loads of time. I didn't have to start. So I was out there for ages and ages trying to start this lawnmower, and I was not going to give up. And I was like, I was getting lactic acid build up in my shoulders trying to start this thing. But there was something in me that sort of just knew. And that I've always carried with me. This like, just keep going, just that little bit more, because I'm curious about the feeling. I'm curious about, you know, that's really exciting, that like, oh, just that little bit further. And I did start it. And everyone was completely shocked, but I was still told to go to bed. And an alternative form to that story, because there's two versions to that story.
Is the other one come from your sister, Kim?
No, Kim was one of the shocked ones. But there was another night I was also trying to avoid going to bed, and I couldn't start it.
Okay.
But instead of just going to bed, I went into the shed and I got these garden shears out of the shed, and I just spent the whole evening cutting the grass on my hands and knees with these garden shears. And so there's probably something in that psyche of a 7-year-old that maybe somebody looking on might have thought, she's gonna nudge it a bit. She's gonna explore what others might think that she's not capable of. And that felt really important to me, that, oh, maybe I'm capable of more than others think that I am. Don't laugh.
I'm not going to laugh. Do you know what I was actually thinking? It's funny that you were so desperate to stay up, and now you're just so desperate to go to bed all the time. Oh, how you've changed.
That thing I was saying about cycles.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, exactly. It'll come back round, won't it? When you talk about that story in the book, there was a quote that really stood out to me. And you said, it was the first inkling that the limits to my ability might be simply fabrications of other people's minds. Very reflective at 7 years old.
I was so reflective at 7.
Yeah, deep.
It's such a shame I couldn't keep it up.
It's, I mean, anybody who knows you and, you know, and definitely anyone that has followed you will know that, you know, the thing that stood out so much about that quote is that I still see that in you. You know, that is something that you've carried on through your life. What's the, like, does it motivate you, that other people questioning that boundaries that society or people might put on you?
That's a great question.
For you.
Am I motivated by other people saying it can't be done?
Yes.
I think I'd be lying if I said no.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there is something in that. And I don't know that that's competitiveness. There's something, though, that is, it's just exciting. It's interesting. I'm curious about our possibilities, because I just feel like we've all got, every single person in this room and beyond has got so much potential, and we've got so much to offer, and we're only probably going to explore a percentage of it, a fraction of it in our lifetime. And that, that's a driver, I think. And also to try and communicate that to other people, you know, that especially people that maybe come from disadvantaged backgrounds and haven't been told that, haven't had the privilege and the luxury of my background and my parents saying, go on then, have a go.
Yeah.
For someone to say, do you know what, actually you could maybe do that, and don't let anyone tell you that you can't. You go out there and you fail at it and you get better at it, and yeah, and I'll be around to help pick you up.
Do you know what it was reminding me of when we were out in the Alps on a mountain bike ride in the GR5, wasn't it? We were doing a section of that. There was a rule that we had that we mustn't believe what anybody said if they didn't have a bike in their hands. Because of the limitations. Do you remember that?
Yeah. No, it cannot be done. You cannot go down that single track. It's not rideable.
And then we're like, it's the best single track we've ever ridden.
It's so interesting. Yeah. It's just other people's perceptions, isn't it? And sometimes you're daft if you don't take advice, for sure. but I think, yeah.
There's that urge just to say, oh, really? Nobody's done that before.
Yeah. So, and sometimes we have got ourselves to bother.
There is times I wish I listened to that. I think we were even riding along a ridge line and the man was down on the path telling us that doesn't go.
Yeah, while we were riding along.
While we were riding it. It was like, feels like it goes really well. When you talk in your book, there's a whole chapter on the Campsie Fells and that iconic haircut that you had as a young child.
You want me to talk about my haircut?
I do. Do you know why? Because when I read it, and I went back and listened to you reading it, and it made me think, that when your friends show you childhood pictures of themselves, they've always got really funny haircuts, don't they? And like a bowl's been round it, and we've laughed along at that haircut and some of those photos, but actually it went so much deeper than that, and it was really part of your identity and that struggle in finding what your identity was at a really young age.
Yeah. The haircut, by the way, just super short. Like, I looked like a boy. I looked like a boy until I was maybe 16. And it was like super short back and sides. And when I was younger than that, like, I was always mistaken for a little boy. And my sister too. In fact, when my sister went up to primary school, she introduced herself to her primary school teacher, and me as a baby in a pram introduced her. She said, "I'm Nigel and this is my brother Patrick." And my mum was like, "What? Who are these girls?" So that this was a theme, and my mum was just like, "Whatever you want to be, And this was in a time when it wasn't okay, actually. Like, people were still trying to put you in gendered boxes.
Oh, absolutely. That was ages ago, wasn't it? Seriously, though, it was a different time. It wasn't like now.
And it fills my heart with joy to see that there's more permissive spaces for people just exploring what their gender identity is. Because back then, I identified as a boy. I wanted to be a boy, but I was given the space to just be whoever it was that I wanted to be. And as a result of that space that I was given, I wasn't forced into a male or a female box. I was just Lee. And then as a result of that, I realised, I'm a woman and I'm very happy being a woman. But I wondered if I would have been forced into one of those boxes if I hadn't had that space.
Yeah.
And so that space, I think, now that's coming to be in society where kids have got time to figure it out, when they're not forced into, not just gender, everything, and they're not forced into being something too early, then they can figure it out, and it all just works out for the best, works out naturally.
And I guess people, looking in your life, you are very well known, popular, just like always. Always, you're out there very confident, and I think reading that early years and that battle that you had against society then, so your family was very free and you had that space to sort of explore, but you didn't necessarily have that in the school environment, did you? Or
no.
Having to try and fit in and hold your ground was very interesting,
Yeah, definitely not. No, school was really, really difficult. Primary school was great, and then secondary school, when again, those social stereotypes start to come to play, I found it really, really difficult, and really struggled socially at school. Felt crippled with a lack of confidence. Didn't show it, but that's you just muddle through, don't you? When you're that age, everything's just chaos at that age, which is why I went on, I guess, to become a youth worker. But that coming out of that, like finding those little nuggets of gold that help you come out of that horrible, tumultuous way of being as an adolescent, I don't know what I would have done if I hadn't found bikes and rugby and these things that actually helped me to figure out who it was that I was and be accepted for who I was. So my bike then, when I was sort of 14, 15, was really important to me. I would skip school and go and mountain bike in the Campsie Fells, and that was how I felt like my fullest self, my most alive and holistic self when I was out there. often alone, sometimes with a small group of really lovely guys from school that I wasn't allowed to speak to in school because boys and girls didn't speak to each other in school unless they were dating. So, yeah.
Unless they were dating, even if they were dating, I think.
Oh, really?
At 14, yeah.
Oh, really? Not allowed even to speak then?
Just, yeah, everyone's crippled with anxiety at that point, aren't they?
It's true, it's not an unusual story.
Yeah, for sure. And then you went on to university. You got out of school, you found sports, and you went on to university. What were you? Tell us what you were studying there.
Because you can't remember.
I can.
So I did a degree in outdoor education.
Yeah.
And then I went on to do a postgrad in child and adolescent psychotherapy. And that sort of formed the basis of a lot of the stories in the book and the basis of how I guess I am as an adult in the world. Because it felt really important to me to bring outdoor education and these outdoor experiences for young people together with the mental and the social aspects. So it felt really important to me that those two things came together. And when they did, so that's what psychotherapy was, a one-to-one project that worked with mostly boys that had been excluded from school, worked with them one-to-one to build mountain bikes and then ride them. That felt like it all just come together in this perfect project. Because, yeah, I think talking therapies don't always work, especially for young men.
Yeah.
But riding bikes with them, you know, that's the therapy with a small t. It works for me. Like, it makes me feel great. I could tell from them sitting in one-to-one rooms they were fidgeting about and it wasn't working for them. So just going outside just got behind that barrier and just made us both, it shifted our brain chemistry, it made us feel good. And then always the talking therapy would happen after, like in the van ride on the way back from the mountain bike ride. They'd be like, oh, and this is happening, and this is happening, and I'm worried about that. And, you know, it was such an amazing privilege to work with those boys in that way.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I loved your stories about making your journey home even longer because they were just starting to open up after the mountain bike ride, after hurling themselves down hills.
Yeah.
No, it sounds amazing, and I like that your personality came out in that project as well. Do you know, like your personality of being a bit of a rule breaker maybe, and not wanting to stay within the confines of whether that's like social pressures or like in education. And it seemed to be like a bit of a battle that you would then have between this connection that you had for the young people and then having to sit down in meetings where there's social workers, where there's education, where there's parents who maybe haven't got that same sort of thought process. Any examples?
Yeah, absolutely. So there's one boy in particular that stands out. We both work for psychotherapy. We both work with many boys in the Highlands of Scotland. But there's this one boy in particular who stands out to me as having taught me so much. Colin, not his real name, but Colin and I worked together for nearly 2 years, actually. And when I first met him, he had a PlayStation and a weed addiction. He didn't want to leave the house. He wasn't interested in mountain biking, which is a really, really bad place to start that project. So we started just fiddling with tools together, and little by little got him into a workshop. And then by the end of 6 months, he'd built his own bike. And then he was like, okay, well, yeah, maybe we can ride it. And we started riding little distances. And then Colin was taken into care about 20 miles outside of Inverness. And I was called up by his social worker, who said Colin's been undertaking some really risk-taking behaviours. And what he'd done was he'd ridden this bike, this handmade bike, he'd ridden it from his care home to his family home in Inverness, just to check in with his mum. And I was like, that isn't risk-taking behaviours, that's not a failure. That is the epitome of other ways to win here. But how do you say that to a group of statutory workers that are just like, this is how it needs to go? And all of those boys, most of those boys had what we now like to label everybody as having as ADHD. So they didn't want to sit still, they were on the go, you know, they had a lot of similar traits to I did when I was that age, and probably still do. And I was really struck by a piece of writing by Florence Williams in The Nature Fix. You read that? It's such a good book. She talks about these ADHD sufferers as possibly being our saviours, because they just see the world in a different way. You know, they're the ones that need to get off the sofa. They need to go outside and connect with what it is that makes them human, with what it is that makes them tick. They need to put their hands in the dirt and, you know, run around under the stars at night. You know, this is the stuff that I think, personally, I feel like we're missing. We're starting to miss more and more of. We're becoming more and more disconnected from that way of being. And if we can just look to those young people that we're trying to squeeze back into these boxes and be like, what is it that they're actually saying? What lessons have they got for us? And turn it on its head a little bit. It feels like there's quite a lot of learning out there that maybe we need to let go of what we think we know and look at others for a bit more learning.
And of course, you're not still in youth work now, but do you, as your role as Active Nation Commissioner, did you have any insight into what was happening? Has there been any progress since you worked in youth work, sort of like 12 years ago, 15 years ago?
Yeah. So the job as Active Nation Commissioner was really, like, my whole drive was around social justice. It was like, it's all very well and good for the Scottish Government to say, you know, we all need to be a more active nation in order to make our health better. But unless you're going to give equal access to green spaces in order to do that, equal opportunities to do that, and you're not going to come down with a ton of bricks on a boy that you know, makes his own adventure, then we're not going to manage that. So we need to be thinking in terms of levelling up all of this access to green space. And this is something that I think the outdoors is guilty of, that I've been guilty of in the past, not make it this sort of elite playground where you need specialist equipment and you need a certain skill set and you need a set of education in order to access it. You don't need any of that. You can just go. And in fact, I had the most amazing conversation last night with somebody who does a lot of stuff wearing like natural fibres in the outdoors, so she's sort of recreating past garments. And she was saying that she's really addicted to wearing, like, you know, wool garments, like old school garments, because it brings her closer to the elements. It was such an amazing take on it. Wow. So, you know, we're insulated from the outdoors with our Gore-Tex and our waterproof trousers, and are we then insulating ourselves from this experience that we're sort of going into? But are we, like, putting on our battle garments and then going into the outdoors to conquer it?
Yeah. Or
do we go in without maybe all the specialist equipment, you know, within safety bounds, obviously? You're just going in your pants.
Disclaimer.
Do we need to be as uptight as we are about all the safety and all the risk assessments and everything that stop young people from accessing the outdoors, or is the biggest risk them not doing it at all?
Yeah, for sure. And that's, I mean, there's so many examples of that, isn't there? But I saw that recently you'd posted something about wearing helmets. And as both coming from a youth working background, one of the biggest barriers to young girls getting on bikes at the age of like 12 and 13 was wearing helmets. Yeah. But the schools wouldn't let you take them out without wearing helmets, and obviously like the risks that come with that. And so there's that barriers are everywhere, aren't they?
Yeah, absolutely. That's a really good example, the helmet example. Yeah. And it's one that I have a battle with all the time. Yeah. Because I would always wear a helmet if I was mountain biking. Yeah. Absolutely, without a shadow of a doubt. But I don't always wear them when I'm on something that I've assessed to be safe. And there's a lot of evidence to show that actually it makes you safer. It makes drivers see you better, see you as a human rather than And this idea that well, in Australia it's the law to wear a helmet, and as a result of that, far fewer people ride bikes because it's the law. And so then you're looking at the health.
Actual law.
The actual law.
They need to know where their helmet is all the time.
It has to be on their head.
The barrier.
All the time. Whether or not they're cycling, you have to wear a helmet.
Did you know that about Australia?
I didn't know that about Australia.
Really really fun nights out in clubs, I bet, with everyone's helmets
Well, very
on.
safe nights out. Very safe nights out in clubs.
Let's go back, if you will, to your bike racing. So, like the first spark, the first time you felt, you've already alluded to being a lot older than other,
not that old.
than other people getting into bike racing. But yeah, what was that spark? What made you feel that drive towards racing and putting yourself in that place?
Well, it was an accident. The first mountain bike race I ever entered, it was just on home turf, and I knew the trail, and I entered it, and I won. And so there's a few things in that makes you think. So suddenly you're faced with, oh, I can do this. You have this big lurch in confidence. You're like, wow, I had no idea that was possible, and that's really addictive. I find that really. I mean, for an ego, for a sense of self, for a sense of place in the world, that's a pretty attractive thing to be like, oh, I could be good at this.
Yeah.
And so I got hooked on that. I mean, I love the physicalness of riding a bike anyway. Why are you laughing?
I'm not laughing, I'm supporting you.
You know this. So yeah, that heart and lung stuff, like really in your body, not thinking about anything else, just totally focused on what's happening. And mountain biking is brilliant for that, isn't it?
Yeah.
No matter what you've got going on in your head, you have to concentrate on what is exactly in front of your wheel. So I can't meditate. I find it really difficult to sit down and breathe and clear my head. But I can think about nothing for an hour and a half just by, dropping the hammer on a mountain bike. And it's different, but it's really exciting, and it sort of clears the mind of everything other than one thing. And I just really enjoyed where I went in those sort of almost out of body experiences in races, where you're just like, there's not like anything else. And it was so painful. It was so physically uncomfortable. And there was a curiosity around managing that pain and that discomfort, because I sort of sensed that was where the secret to sporting success could lie for me. If I could just manage that pain, then maybe I could just keep going a little bit further. So I was hooked on the curiosity of what that could do. And as you're getting better at something, it's very hard to step off a conveyor belt, isn't it? So, yeah.
Yeah, that's it, because the possibilities are growing and you're getting better and you're all of a sudden you're on it. Yeah, you speak about lap 3 of a 5-lap race and the pain that you go to while you're in there, and that apprehension of being on the start line and being able to figure out that's what it is. You're scared of where you're going to go. I did wonder when I was reading it, is that something, did that come naturally to you? That's something a lot of people would shy away from if they'd never had any experience of that before. And also, like, what does that leave you with, like, moving on from racing when you've had this ability to hurt, like, put your body through that physical and mental pain?
So I think that this is a really key part of the Other Ways to Win story, because that hurting that I've just described, when everything is screaming, every cell in your body is telling you to stop, that naturally doesn't sit right with this Other Ways to Win title. And yet it's the managing of that was of most interest to me. So this idea that instead of just like forcing, so all the coaches, all the traditional coaches, is you feel that pain, but you ignore it and you force your way through it. That I felt like, no, there's got to be a different way to do that. I don't want to hurt myself like that. That doesn't feel right. It doesn't feel healthy. Can I still do the thing that I love doing, but it not be like self-abuse? Because that's sort of what it's edging on. And so I did experiment with that, and it was a revelation to me. And I think that's what I've taken away from the elite stuff that's made it easier to step away from elite level riding, is this idea that you can feel that resistance, you can feel that discomfort and that pain, and if you don't resist it, if you just let it flow through you, you know, you don't hold yourself brittly. You know, it's like anything. If you hold yourself brittly when you're going to fall, you're going to really hurt yourself. If you can relax into it, then you can get away with so much more. You can let that pain and that resistance sort of flow through you and just accept it for what it is and breathe and smile. And these things really had a massive impact on how fast I could go on a bike. And importantly, because you asked the question about leaving, how could you leave that world? What did you take from that world? That is possibly the most important learning I've ever had. And it probably wouldn't have got there if I hadn't found it through racing. You can't, there's always going to be pain and discomfort, and you're going to come up against difficult stuff. And you can't hold yourself brittle against it. You can't resist it, because it's always cycles. It's always going to come back. You have to let it flow through you. And so I guess it's that I've taken away, and it's been my biggest learning from it.
Yeah. Throughout your racing journey, and in the book, you've many stories about it, but the one that made me laugh out loud was that, and I think it sums up the tussle that you have to this parallel life that you could be living. You're living as an elite athlete, and you've got like the day-to-day structure of that you really need to, like, you know, the attention to detail that you have to give. And then you've got all your friends and family who are not elite athletes and want you to be funly and want you to go to festivals with them and dance with them and stay up all night with them and not take your own pillow with you and things like that. It just, it's just really interesting sort of mindset. But then when that two worlds cross over, tell us about the festival, and particularly the water bottle experience.
I knew that would be the bit that would
It's
make
so
you laugh
good.
out loud. So, yeah, it was always a real tussle trying to find this balance between just being like someone that your friends aren't going to put in the bin, and somebody who can still race a mountain bike. So I was racing every weekend, and it was my life. But I was also, I had a partner and I had a group of friends, and I was sort of trying to find this balance. So I decided, okay, I could do this. I can go to this music festival, Knockengorrick Music Festival. It's a riot. Like, before and after racing days, I've really, really enjoyed it. During racing days, I was like, okay, maybe I can find a balance here. I'll go to this festival with Fergat and Al, and I'll just drink water, and I'll go to bed at 11, and I'll get up in the morning, and I'll drive an hour to Kirritree, where there's a Scottish mountain bike race. And I'll race it, and I'll be totally fine. And I'll bring those two worlds together, and what could possibly go wrong? Everything. In answer to my own question, everything could go wrong. So I went to bed as planned, but Fergat and Al, who are my support crew, you need somebody in the feed zone to pass you up bottles and sort of be your rock.
Yes.
They stayed up all night. And in the morning, I had to go and find them and pour them into the van. And they were still wearing their tweed outfits with feather boas and glittery eyes and stuff. And I was like, oh no. I was just going to go, and I rocked up to Kirritree, and everybody around me is, in their little white lycra on their turbo trainers like this, having slept on their pillows that they brought from home. And I open a van door, and just this festival paraphernalia fell out. Fergat and Al, one of them was asleep, the other one fell out the door. I was like, I'll just go and sign on. Normally you get someone to go and sign on for you so you can do your warm-up. I'll do it. Came back, they'd gone. My bike was still there. I was like, I just hope that they're in the feed zone and they've got some water for me. I didn't see them again until the race started, and I came back round in that first lap. And to give them their credit, there they were, in the feed zone. The pair of them, still with feather boas, and I don't know. One of them had a pint, and the other one was sort of vaguely trying to hold this bottle up to me, but it was our coordination was all off. Missed the bottle. It was bad, and this is where I didn't get the balance right, because instead of just relaxing into it and laughing it off and writing off the race, I was shouting, sake. Where's my bottle? I got really just angry, racy Lee. So the next time I came round into the feed zone, all of my friends from the festival had lined up in the feed zone. They'd all found their way there, and they were all like holding up all these different things, like steak pies and pints of beer and slices of pizza, and they were all like just taking the piss out of my uptightness.
It was the half-eaten pot noodle that I laughed.
I should have stopped. I should have stopped and written off and eaten the pot noodle. But I was too in it then. I probably would now.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
I would never pass up a pot noodle.
Craigie now can barely cycle past a pub without popping in, so I can't imagine how you managed to cycle past.
To win.
Lee, we could chat all night and day as we normally do, but I want to leave time for some questions from the audience. I think it leads us on to a reading, I think would be a lovely way to end, from your book that maybe describes other ways
to win. It's the reason I feel like we've talked a lot about elite level racing, and it's important because that's sort of where it began. But I think the important part is like why I do this stuff now, and I've sort of alluded to it. And I know that you know this, and I know that a lot of people in the audience will know the reasons that we do this stuff, this wilderness immersion stuff, these long distance endurance races. So I'm just going to read to you a little bit about that hopefully will summarise what the other way to win that I'm experiencing now is. The state I'm seeking when I set out on a mission of endurance is not pain and discomfort. It's the opposite. Of course, I experience uncomfortable feelings in the course of a 550-mile non-stop mountain bike race, but I do so in my day-to-day life too. Pretending the hard things don't exist and attempting to avoid them is what causes us so much suffering. Endurance for me doesn't mean gritting my teeth and shoving my feelings away so that I can keep moving. It means feeling resistance to pain and discomfort and allowing it to flow through me. By being in a situation where I have no choice but to make friends with it, I gain perspective, strength, and gratitude. I've remained awake and moved through countless sunsets, sunrises, and fickle weather systems, and I felt very scared and lonely. I've suffered countless crises of confidence in the cold, wet darkness before the sun comes up or the rain stops. I've moved through these dark, uncomfortable places and emerged utterly stripped down physically and emotionally. What follows is a period of intense calm and a humbled, energized conviction that I'm both utterly insignificant and a vital part of something much bigger. I like who I become on these long bike rides. In focusing on one big physical challenge in the mountains, I can harness a flow of natural energy. I stop feeling stressed about everything by being consumed by the stress of one thing, and I deal with negative thoughts in the moment rather than allowing them to fester in my subconscious. In this set of circumstances, something as hard as racing 550 miles becomes easier than navigating my everyday life.
Oh, wow. I have to say, reading the book is excellent, but for me, listening to the audiobook was just wonderful. You've got such a lovely voice despite having the cold, I think, when you were recording it.
Yeah,
It just set a really nice tone. So, yeah. Will we open up the floor to some questions? I'm sure there's lots. Put your hands up if you got any. Oh, there we go.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. Hi.
Hey, when you have something like cycling as a way to help you process things and feel good, have you been confronted with a situation in which you're injured and you don't have your bike?
Yeah.
And what do you do then? I know a lot of folks, myself, can lose identity when you don't have that outlet.
Yeah, all the time. So the question was...
No, on you go.
The question was, if you're sick or you're injured and your outlet is cycling or something physical, I guess, just can be anything physical. What do you do with that when you don't have that outlet? Absolutely. Incredibly difficult. Really, really hard, isn't it? And I've been injured loads and been put up against that a few times. And I think that's where that resistance learning comes in. So like, the hardest thing that I can do is sit still. And so actually it's the best lesson. You can learn, if it takes ages to adjust to that. It'll take me weeks of railing and crying and being really frustrated and angry. And then something will give in it if I breathe into it, if I lean into it, and I try to focus on the something else. Like just being outside, I'd still need to be outside. But in being outside and not moving through it, you will notice more, and you might experience more. Other senses are maybe opened up, and so I can sometimes get myself into that state. Once I've done the raging part, I can hopefully find that sort of period of calm. As long as I can be outside, then I can find that calm. The terror would be if I was in prison for something. I just hope they never catch me. Can you imagine? I should be in prison.
Oh, stop. It's a long weekend. Yeah, it's interesting, especially like you always strike me as out of like all my friends, you're the one that most connects with movement. And yes, in the beginning it was like lots of movement and big journeys, but actually just knowing your daily routine and how much like you rely on being able just to walk and go to the river or get into the trees.
Yeah.
That would be
it'd be a tricky one, I think.
Yeah, be good. Be very good. Hi.
Can you just tell us a little bit more about the Adventure Syndicate?
Yes.
Why it started, but also how you get involved in it? If you can get involved in it.
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been asked to describe the Adventure Syndicate in a bit more detail. So the Adventure Syndicate are a collective of women who adventure by bike. And then we tell stories about it in a way to encourage more people, but especially more women, into that space, feel like they belong in that space. And it was set up in 2017. And it was largely as a result of myself and Emily Chappell having conversations about how women weren't being represented in cycling and in outdoor spaces. And wouldn't it be lovely if there was a different set of role models who weren't really focused on what it was that they looked like and were just like having fun, and it wasn't about conquering stuff and setting goals and stuff. It was about enjoying movement and each other's company, and absolutely doing some hard things along the way, because that gives you a different set of strengths. So that was where it came from, and it's sort of grown arms and legs now. It's been through lots of different iterations. Jenny was a director for a while, Phil and Alice are here, and the three of us now run the adventuring element of this, and we work with storytellers to help us make those films and bring people together. So a really important part of it is bringing people together in gatherings to help promote community, because I think community, a sense of community, finding your adventure buddies is a super important part of it. And because Jen and I were from a youth work background, when Jenny was involved, we did a lot of teenage girls bike packing courses, and so it keeps evolving. Whoever gets involved next will take it in a different direction. But yeah.
Tell us about last night. You were the Adventure Syndicate.
No.
Tell.
Not
that bit.
Yeah, that was a fun project. So the Adventure Syndicate coupled with Kat Young-Nicol, who's also here, who's an academic from Goldsmiths University, who recreated these incredible costumes from our foremothers from the past. These incredible women who created these costumes that meant that they could go into the outdoors way back when women weren't really seen in the outdoors, and do physical stuff, climb mountains, go fishing and hunting and cycling, and do all these things, but then also be able to transform their outfits so that they were socially acceptable. And we thought, this is cool, we need to be celebrating this. And this is relevant today, we need to be talking about these issues today. So we made a bit of a film about that was showing last night, and we were all up on stage in our costumes. And yeah, the film's called Women on the Move, and can be viewed at the festival, and it will be online afterwards as well. But really important messaging in there, I think, about how women were represented, how we're portrayed, the stories that we're told about how active we can be. And yeah, I think it's super relevant today, that stuff still.
It really is, and it's very amusing. I'd highly recommend going and watching it. Any other questions? Hi.
Yeah, I thought the book was brilliant.
Thank you.
Woo!
You thought the book was brilliant, everybody.
Just made that bit embarrassed. I mean, you're a storyteller. What are the stories that you're hoping that 60-year-old Lee will be telling?
Oh.
Lovely question.
What are the stories that 16-year-old Lee would be telling or hearing? 60. 60. Oh, wow.
Much closer.
What a question. Wow. Well, God, I really hope that she's discovered even more ways to win. Because I think I'm onto something here. I think just, I'm hoping that as my body becomes less and less able to do the stuff that it does, I'm hoping that I'll be able to take a few lessons from my mum, who is nearly 80, and who is still moving. Like, movement's her life as well. She still moves, but she moves in a really different way. And having seen her sort of transform into someone who, I guess, needs to spend a bit more time being more sedate, but still gets so much that she notices things that I don't notice. And I'm hoping that I'll become more like her, and this drive to do and to keep exploring, like keep pushing this curiosity of what I'm physically capable of, might merge into what emotionally I might be able to handle when the time comes that I am forced to sit still a bit longer or see things in a different way. So I think she's going to be incredibly wise.
You've got a lot of work to do in a short amount of time.
Hey,
Get busy.
not that short, all right? Thanks for your question.
Yeah, it was lovely. Any other questions? Hi.
What have you taken from being an elite athlete and a career in the outdoors into youth work? Like, what kind of skills and mindset, and how has that helped you overcome this work in really challenging situations? Very challenging life experiences.
Yeah. So how did the elite racing world inform the youth work world? Yeah. Well, really practically, when I was running psychotherapy, working with these boys, I had a whole fleet of very, very posh bikes. And it was so lovely to be able to give them one of these bikes and be like, this is what you're riding today. This is, you're going to have so much fun on this because it's a really light machine and you're worth this. And that feels really valuable to have been able to offer them practically that. But I think in terms of what I took personally into youth work, I'm wondering if it might not have been the other way around. So when I was racing, I was very, very focused. I was very selfish. I had to be. I was focused on my own stuff, and uptight. I needed to take my own pillow everywhere. I needed to consider what I ate the whole time. I was really, really tight and restrictive. And working with these boys loosened me up. Like, it gave me a different perspective. It helped me see the bigger picture. And they helped me, actually, to perform better, I think. I don't know, I think we might have to ask Colin what he felt that he got from this uptight woman that came and took him mountain biking once a week. But there was something just really, really valuable about being with them and sharing those experiences with them and just like letting go of the heart rate and the focus and just experiencing their joy, like through them, like feeling the joy from them riding these really lovely bikes in the woods. That returned me to the reasons why, and actually would also have been a performance enhancer for me. I think when I look back, if I'd done one thing differently as an elite level racer, it was relax a bit more. Don't be so uptight. You don't need to be as tight as you are. It'll happen. And some of my best performances were after an experience like that with someone like Colin, or having gone bikepacking just before. I just let go of it all, and it all just came together on the day. So.
I love the description of you going into Colin's child plans meeting with your dirty, filthy mountain bike into this really clinical, stale room with all these professionals, and it being a very, obviously practical reasons, but also purposeful, because the mountain bike, the dirty mountain bike, just broke that barrier down and gave Colin something to like connect with and speak about, and you were an ally again.
Yeah.
Lovely. Any other questions? I've actually got an anonymous one from an audience member. She's wondering, what is your back squat PB? I don't know who it's from, just got a message about it.
I can't imagine who that's from either. I don't know.
We don't
Philippa?
believe you.
I don't know. I can't actually do squats. I've got a dodgy knee.
Oh.
Never been able to do squats.
Demo? No.
Only if you do.
Did somebody put their hand up here? Hi.
Hi. Considering how much you move, you must have to eat a lot of food. Favourite bikes?
Great question. Favourite bike snacks? Oatcakes. Carrots. No, I'm only kidding. Jenny, when we ride together, Jenny eats sugar and I try not to, or we've got quite different nutritional strategies. But I don't just eat carrots and oatcakes. I do eat more than that. I'll eat a lot of cheese. I make my own trail mix, so like bits of cheese and nuts and raisins and stuff. I can just shovel that in. And I try to eat properly, like on big long journeys. It's so important to eat properly. Like I've realised that you can keep snacking, or you can knock it back, stop, have a meal, and keep going, and you'll be as fast. And that, I think, has been really important learning. But I also I find my stomach sort of cramps up if I'm doing really long endurance stuff, and a boiled potato with the skin taken off is quite handy.
With the skin taken off? Who takes the skin off for you?
One of my people. You take the skin off my boiled potatoes. The skin is important because it's acidic and it'll upset your stomach.
Oh. You should put that into the next time you tell that story.
Okay. Okay, right, thanks for the feedback.
In case you've not got a pal to pull you up on it. Yeah, that is a good question. Because I am always amazed, actually, at... I think you just know what your body needs to fuel it, whereas I panic that my body needs way more than it possibly does, so I go on to, like, eating mode to deal with probably other things, whereas you've sort of finely tuned that and know what your body needs for that energy output, perhaps.
Finely tuned until I get it wrong.
And bonk.
And bonk, yeah. We've all been there, haven't we?
You've had some big bonks in your time, haven't you?
Yeah, but it's too early in the morning to go into that.
We've got time for one more question. Let's see. If we have one, if not, I have. Oh, there we go. Hand. Hi.
Hey there. I'm just really curious about your role as Active Nation Commissioner.
Active Nation Commissioner.
Yeah, and kind of just what that encompasses and what the kind of future of that might be.
Yeah, thanks for asking that question, because Jenny asked it and I completely dodged it.
That's fine, though.
So it was a post set up by the Scottish Government, so it was independent of government, but working really closely with Transport Scotland to try and encourage more everyday journeys actively. So there was an environmental aspect to it, but they were wanting to focus on the health aspects, and I really pulled in the social justice aspects. So for those 3 reasons, this felt like a really important piece of work to do. And mostly it was about giving people that might not otherwise have it a voice in what it is that they need to be more active. So our health, our obesity crisis, our health crisis disproportionately affects people from lower socioeconomic backgrounds. And so it was really making sure that they have what they need in this disproportionate world to achieve the targets that our government are setting them. And really focusing on the joy of moving actively. So focusing on, you know, it not being a pain to leave the car at home, but actually getting some joy out of the journey of walking or running or cycling to school or work felt really important, because I think we can be really down on that message, be like, you have to do this for the environment. So my job was sort of to try and twist that narrative a bit and work with lots of partners to try and share that different messaging around active travel.
Now, we have run out of time, but Lee is going to be in the tent just opposite the entrance, doing book signings and answering questions right up until the trail run starts. And then she's going to be running off. So you can either catch her on the run or over at the book signing. I'd like to thank Kendal Mountain Book Festival for putting this event on this morning. Thank you all for getting up so early and being such a great audience. And thank you to Lee, Craigie.
And thank you to Jay.
No, thank you.
No,
Lee.
thank you.
Thank you.
No, thank you.